Yeah, see, I do think the superannuation industry is innovative. I think that despite being highly regulated and with extensive competition, I think that given the complex environment where regulatory changes are frequent and restrictive, funds and administrators have had to be innovative to remain viable for its members.
I'll say yes, of course, and I'll give you hopefully a couple of examples to back that up. I mean, if you think about the beginning of our industry, the Accord plan back in the 80s that started our whole industry off was probably one of the most innovative pieces of legislation globally. So if you take that as a starting point and the innovation that that has spawned, you'd have to say that that is a fantastic baseline of innovation. If then you add on the back of that, the investment innovation, of course, I've spent my life in investment management, we are a global leader in infrastructure investing. Infrastructure investing did not exist anywhere else except for us. And when you go to the US, they look to Australia for the lead in technology around the member. And I smile when I say this, but my daughter, who is a member of an industry fund, literally from start to finish joined it on her app, took about 3 minutes, invested the money, took about another minute, and she's never rung anyone, talked to anyone, had looked at the website. If you take that from when I started, when I was her age, she's 25, massive member technology gains. And then lastly, admin has been, the poor cousin for quite a while, but the innovation now in how they're interacting, how they're using AI, how they're using machine learning, how they're trying to get a deeper understanding of the member is just, for me, smells of innovation across the board.
Look, I think there's pockets of the industry that's innovative. I think there's some, old legacy technology that we still struggle with to a certain extent. And I think, compliance and risk still are somewhat of a blocker to innovation. But I think, certainly over the last 12 to 18 months, we are seeing funds doing a lot more on the innovation side. And so I think, there's huge opportunities for innovation over the coming years to really reshape the industry.
I think most people would say costs, because innovation does cost a lot more. And I think with an industry that's got constant pressures to keep costs down, supporting innovation is a really difficult call for funds and trustees to try and balance the spend against the need to stay relevant and hopefully gain a competitive advantage. But I think the biggest barrier is always the dynamic environment, like due to the rapid and significant legislative changes that come through. And even over the last 20 years, if we look at the significant barriers, like superstream legislation ended up being one of our biggest process improvements, but it was a huge game changer for a lot of the funds. And even the current environment where we've got 50 proposed or pending legislative regulatory changes underway, this needs to be a focus for the funds and administrators, which distracts from innovation and development.
So for me, I think that organisational support and mindset is probably the two inhibitors as I've observed it. I wonder how many organisations truly support that failure sort of approach. Innovation by itself is tough, but if you've got a culture of allowing people to, try something and fail, then I think that's a big thing. And then, frankly, I don't think every human being wakes up every day innovative. I think you have to seek out and find, you have to create that opportunity. And then innovation is not about, I'm going to use this word, the cure for cancer. It can be small, innovative steps that can make a massive difference. So I think defining what innovation is doesn't have to be big bang.
I think you've still got, significant regulatory change, which is really taking up a lot of funds' time, just trying to comply with legislation. And, there's always the uncertainty of what's coming next. But, in addition to that, I think that risk and compliance lens is a real challenge for many funds. I think, with some of the more recent APRA changes, you're starting to see funds, potentially push back some of that innovation because they are concerned as to, if we spend a bit too much money here, what does that mean for, the outcomes that we're generating for members with some of the more, recent financial interest tests. So I think that is starting to create some barriers there.
I think for us, it's our members. I think how we can provide more benefits and differentiate ourselves from other funds, being focused for us on providing a better life and retirement for our members, what they need now, looking at ways to increase services, online technology, member online experiences, mobile apps, giving the information at their fingertips. But I think we've conducted a lot of member forums where we try and better understand the real members and what they want and need from their super funds, helping everyday members relate to their super, getting them to set a lifestyle that they want in retirement, and allowing us to help them focus on their goals and getting them there.
Flat out competition. When I started, there were a lot more funds, and now, in my backyard where I was born, I worked at QIC, Q Super and Sun Super are about to get together to form a sort of $200 billion fund. That competition for members' attention, retention, lifespan, for me has been the greatest catalyst. And therefore, the providers of those services to those funds have had to innovate as well, because they can do it themselves. They've got the scale and the size. So if you're a provider that's not innovating, then you're going to get replaced, because they're going to say, you know what, I don't need to pay a fee for that, I'll do it myself. So, baseline competition for the hearts and minds of the members.
Most of the current providers have done a phenomenal job in terms of what they have provided from an administration perspective with what we believe is legacy technology. So we think the opportunity to really now start to evolve funds operating models, with the ability to use newer technology, plug and play type models where a fund can really start to control their operating model, plug in best of breed sort of third party ancillary systems to offer new member experiences, new products and services, those sorts of things. We really think there's huge opportunity to really look at that over the next sort of 2 to 3 years.
I think all this legislative change, I think that there's just so much happening on the Your Future, Your Super changes, regulatory reporting, monitoring, fund performance, member outcomes. Funds need to focus on meeting legislative requirements whilst providing a solution for their members and remaining viable. So I think that that's going to be our focus for a little while anyway.
Obviously in the member, technology, the AI learning, I've spoken to a few people because it's not really my strength, but just the innovation in technology around getting to know your member better, using machine learning, using AI, so that you feel like you're talking individually to them and they've got no reason to go anywhere. Now, of course, scale matters. So there's only going to be winners and a few winners in my view, but I think that's going to be huge. I think in investment management, where I've spent all my life, they're going to have to continue to be innovative, because if they're not, they'll get replaced by the internal teams. So if they're not coming up with something that people feel like it's value for money when they pay a fee, they're going to be out of business. And then I think lastly, mate, I think that the focus on the post-retirement or the next phase of people's lives where we're going to live a lot longer is also going to have some innovation in product design. We know what the problems are and we understand that, but I think for the average person who's going to retire with those account balances, they're going to want to have some innovation in how they can protect their surplus, but they still can have the comfort that they, don't have to scrimp and save. So I think that's going to be, we've already seen some, but I don't think anyone's cracked that nut yet. And I think that's going to be a massive opportunity.
Look, again, we'll talk to technology, the biased answer. I think there is huge opportunity. We use obviously distributed ledger, which provides some benefits, but I still think, there are significant opportunities around that ecosystem, that open architecture, which really does enable funds to differentiate. I mean, everyone talks about, providing member experience and trying to engage better with members. that's really hard when you've still got, legacy systems, overnight batch processes that aren't providing members information in real time to help them make decisions, and the ability to engage members with real-time data and instant decision making, I think will really start to shape the way that funds engage with members. So I think that's where you'll start to see some real innovation in the industry as we see more and more providers trying to focus on that.
Yeah, I think for us, like being a small fund in the industry, it's important creating the right culture for innovation across every team, especially when most of the time we all have a day job. So creating and planning, executing on initiatives is in addition to the day-to-day work. So having the right support from leadership, creating an environment where we're allowed to take stock of the ever-changing landscape that we have. We dedicate time to determine where the fund may be and our members may be in 5 to 10 years' time, and what innovation is needed to help stay relevant. So whilst there's so much going on with legislative change, we always try to maintain that culture. For us, it's about making sure that the teams have that creative license to go and look at planning activities. We also collaborate with a lot of business partners, so internally and externally, to create a good team in executing some of these innovative ideas, and having good business relationships with those partners. So for us, that's how we do innovation at Russell, to make sure that we cultivate the ideas, we give the time to the team internally, and we choose the right partners for the right projects.
Well, very quickly, I've been fortunate enough to be asked. I'm on 3 boards: Lonsec Financial Group, the Schwartz Family Office. Alan and Carol in Melbourne run their own family office called the Trawalla Group, and then a property firm called Qualitas. So I've actually drawn my answers out of my experience there, and also obviously my long executive career at QIC. And for me, in no particular order, I think it's going to be, I think sustainability in the broadest term is going to really continue with a flywheel. And it's going to come from different angles, including much greater data and analytics to prove what people now call greenwashing sort of marketing and all that stuff. And sustainability is going to be much broader than I think our original concept. So when I look at the property business I'm involved in, fantastic innovation around, solar electricity grids and being able to individually measure and yada, yada. So I just think sustainability's got a long way to go. And I think people are starting to see that momentum. As I said to you, on the Lonsec side, they're a research business, but they're looking at quite innovative investments in technology to allow more quantitative drivers of, baselines, if you like, using AI, using innovation, so that value add is the qualitative insight into the product design. Whereas for a lot of firms, they spend a lot of their human resource on, the pulling together of the data. So I think that's going to have a productivity increase, but I think a much better quality outcome. And then, of course, investment management, there's a lot of thinking going on around what I would call defined benefit thinking for accumulation members, focusing on outcomes and trying to individualize it. We all know that the balanced default is where most people go, but that doesn't mean it suits everyone. There's innovation around the tailoring and individuality of what the members can expect. And, the carrot is, I think it's I think that is the great opportunity, because no one's cracked it yet, and there's some very smart people out there. So long answer, mate, but I think there's really good opportunities in those 3 areas as I look at this. And, there's going to be plenty more that I haven't even thought of yet.
So I think we are different. We see ourselves as different. We don't want to provide the sort of standard administration offering. Our view is that technology should drive efficiency. So, automation is critical for us. We don't want to build the world's largest administration service offering. We want to have the ability to automate the majority of processes, make those significantly more efficient, and offer a better member experience by enabling that broad ecosystem plug and play type technology to offer ancillary service providers that are best agreed across all those verticals, and really start to automate those standard administration processes that really add no value. So that's where we see the real opportunity. Yes, the distributed ledger, adds a nice bit of auto reconciliation and certainty of data. We effectively run an annual review on the system every day because we have to reconcile every part of the administration service. So, but we really see the opportunities around that automation, cost efficiency, and where we can then allow funds to tailor their operating model based on what they want to achieve in terms of engaging with members. That's where we really start to differentiate ourselves.